All right, so today is February 14th, and we're going to start Chapter 8 today. This is class number 12, and if you're watching this video at home, you'll notice a little bit different perspective right now, just because I've got my camera in a different place. So let me, today we're going to start talking about arrays, which you already know about. But we're also going to talk about collections, which I don't think we know that much about. So we're gonna start that now. So let me share my screen. Let me do this and do this, and I don't need this showing. All right, I'm going to put this down here. You probably can't see that at home. Okay, so Chapter 8, and so we're just gonna. This is a two days for Chapter 8. I'll give you I might give you an assignment next time, or I might combine it with the Chapter 9 assignment. I'm not sure, but I think I only planned on giving you at most 10 assignments, and I've been giving you an assignment every week, and there's 15 weeks, I think, or I don't know. Anyway, so let's. So I'm just going to go over these slides today to sort of review and maybe introduce. Oh, there's 68 slides, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so collections. In this. Oh, I got to do the slideshow thing. Okay, slideshow from current slide. And I want to reverse these things. Swap. All right. So objectives. Let me make us, because you guys can't see if I don't do it. Okay. So given the specifications for an application that requires the use of a one-dimensional. Okay. So an objective is we're going to be able to write code that uses a one-dimensional, or a rectangular, which is two-dimensional, or what's called a jagged array, which is kind of, it's like a two-dimensional array, except for the second dimension can be different for each row. If you think of it like rows and columns, one-dimensional is like one column, single column, and then rectangular would be rows and columns. And jagged would be where the number of columns can be different for each row. So if you kind of look at the right side of a rectangular array, it's not rectangular anymore. It's kind of jagged. I just thought of a good way to think about it. You know how in Microsoft Word, you can set the text as being left justified, and if you just do left justified, the right side looks kind of jagged. Whereas if you do if you do what's the one? How do you call it when it spaces the words all the way out? So there's a column, so it's the left side and the right side is the same. Anyway, it's like that. So that'd be a rectangular array. Anyway, so we'll learn how to write code for this, and then given the specifications for an application that requires the use of a collection of classes, a collection class, then we will be able to write code for that. And if you think of a list box, is like a collection. But anyway, this should all be clear by the time we're done with this chapter. And so regarding knowledge objectives, we want to be able to distinguish between a loop and a foreach loop, explain the array class and how it is used with an array. The array class is nice because it's got a bunch of methods in there that help you do stuff that you would do with an array, like sorting. And you'll be able to distinguish between typed and untyped collection classes, describe how a null conditional conditional operator works and when to use it, and the differences between collection classes, the list, the sorted list, the stack, the queue, and the array list. And you may be familiar with these terms, and they mean the same thing. So the syntax for creating a one-dimensional array, you do it like this, where you have the type like int or string, and then you have the array name. So that's just like how you declare a variable, except for you put these square brackets, left and right square bracket, after the type. So it's like int, or like here, decimal. This says we're declaring an array, a decimal array, named totals. And here is another way of doing it, where you say totals, is a new, totals is a variable name, it's a new decimal array, and it's got 4 elements in it. So here we're actually declaring the array length, you see, the array length. And here you can do it with one statement. And here's an example: decimal array named totals, and it's new, and it's 4 elements. So here's how we would do a string, an array of strings, string array named description, and here you're declaring the new string array with 3 elements, 0, 1, and 2. Here first we're declaring a constant, an integer constant named max count, and that we're setting the max count equal to 100. And then here we're declaring a decimal array named prices, and we're setting it to decimal, and we're declaring it with 100 elements. So when this is declared, these 100 elements are allocated in memory. The space is taken up, even though there's nothing in them. And of course, if they're decimal variables, they're 128 bits long, which is 7 bytes long, and that's pretty big. And here here's another way we're doing it. We're declaring discount percentages is a new decimal array that's 100 spaces, just 100 elements. Default values for array elements. If it's a numeric array, be an integer or decimal, the default value for the elements is 0. If it's a character array, the default element is the null character, which is effectively 0. It's a Boolean array, the default value is false, which in binary is a 0. And if it's a date-time array, then this is the default value, which is whatever that is, January 1st, 0001. And if it's a reference type array, then it's null. In other words, it's not referring to anything. Syntax for referring to an element of an array is, let's say you have an array, you have the array name and then the index that we're referring to. So if we declare a decimal array named totals, and it has 4 elements in it, 0, it's decimal. Here's how we can assign values. And so here we're setting the first element to 14.95, the second element to 12.95, the third element to 11.95, and the fourth element to 9.95. And if we go and try to assign the fifth element, there is no fifth element because we've only declared 4. It would throw an index out of range exception. And there's not really any way to extend, it's not really any way to make the array bigger once it's declared. You have to, I mean, if you are running a program and let's say the range is huge or some reason or something, and you decide you need more space, you actually have to declare another array and copy everything. So here's code that assigns objects to an array of strings. So we've declared a string array named names, and it's got 4 elements in it, and we're setting the first element to Ted Lewis, and the second element to Sue Jones, and the third element to Ray Thomas. We can declare an array and assign values to it in one statement. So we say that the type of the array, int, and the array name equals, this is optional, but we can basically just declare the array here, or we can actually just put the elements or the values in curly braces. So for example, here we're declaring an array named, it's a decimal array named totals. It's got 4 elements, and we are actually specifying values in the same statement. Here's another lazier way of doing it. We can just do it this way. For totals, we just put the elements there, and here we do it for names. This thing is a way of doing it where we infer the type of the array by its values. So these look like integer values right here. There's no decimal point, they're numbers. And so here we're declaring a new array named grades, and we're just using the var here, and we're saying it's a new array, and these are the values here, and so it's going to be a 4-element array, integer array. There's a property, a property that arrays have. It's the length property. It tells you what the length of the array is. This is the length that was declared. It's not the length of the values. It's not what's filled up. So here we declare a. So this computes the average of an array of totals. So this is one way of doing it. Let's declare a variable. Let's declare a decimal array named totals, and we've initialized these values here, and we're gonna compute the average. So first we compute the sum of all the totals, add them all up, and then we divide by 4, and that gives us the average. Here we're going to use a for loop. Oh no, this is different. Okay, so we're going to use a for loop to initialize this integer array named numbers that's got 10 elements, and we're going to initialize this array so the first element is 0, the second element is 1, the third element is 2, all the way up to the number of elements minus 1, so 0 through 9, that's 10. And so this is how we can use this length property. And so this way we can declare this array size way up at the beginning, and then later on when we write our code we can just use this length property, and we don't need to remember that it's 10, or this is an alternative to using constants and so on. So this assigns the values. So here's a little piece of code that displays the numbers array. We're going to initialize a string to blank, and then we're going to we're using this array back here that we just initialized, and then we're going to loop from 0 to the size of the array minus 1, less than, and each time we're going to concatenate or append the value of numbers of I followed by a space. So it's going to be 0 space, 1 space, 2 space, and in this case we don't need to use the toString because it defaults to that because we're using a plus sign. This is a number, but we're using a plus sign and a space, and so it automatically converts. The default converts to a string. So it's going to be 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, all the way up to 9 space. The message box, the number string is shown here, and the numbers test is what you see up here. So a loop that computes the average of the totals array. Here we're declaring a sum, and we loop 0 through 9, adding them up. And then we can just divide that sum by the length of the array. That's how you compute the average. And here's a nice little program that displays the totals array. So we define a string that we're going to display out right here. And so we're gonna write into the string the totals value. That's these totals here, these ones. And so we're going to write the first total when it's the first total followed by a return, a new line. And then the second one all the way up to the fourth one followed by a new line. And then we're going to display out this message box. We're going to say the totals are new line. That's the totals are new line. And then we're going to do the total string, which is going to be this, including the new line. And then we're going to stick another new line there, and that's why there's 2 new lines here. 1, 2. And then we're going to output the word sum, and then we're going to write the sum out. Where's the sum? That must be here. We've computed the sum here. Followed by a new line, so it's going to be 4980, which is whatever this turns out to be. And then we're going to display out the word average, followed by the value average. And so this here, this thing here, is the string that's displayed, and then this is the title bar of the message box, this thing. So this is a for each loop. It's like a for loop, except for instead of using the index, the array index to iterate, we just start with the first element of the array, and we keep on going until we get to the end. So this is a for each loop. And every modern computer language has for eaches, for each, somehow. The old days, of course, we didn't have for each, but now we do. And so this says this is the type, and then this is a name that we refer to each element as we pop it off the array. This is what we're going to call it. And then so every element in here, we're going to do something in here, and in here, each iteration of the loop, we refer to the current element of the array by this word array name. So here's an example. And so we're going to sum up the totals. So we have this array called totals. Is that what it's called? Yes, it's called totals. And so this is the element name, and this is only valid inside the loop, you see. So the scope of this element name is just inside the for each loop. So here we're summing them up just like we did before, and then after it we compute this average the same way. And here we're using the for each loop just like before, and we're looping through each element, and this time we're calling it number inside this numbers array. So what we're doing is, you know, in the old way it would be numbers like this, and we would have like an index, and maybe the index would be I, and that's what we call it. That's what we do back here, numbers I. So we use the name of the array, but indexed, whereas here we are using we are naming the element something else, and it doesn't have to be number. It can be, you know, Joe or element or ELE or something, and that's what we use here. And all we're doing is we're concatenating it or appending it onto a string variable, and then we're displaying it out. So this is the same. So space there. So this is code that displays the totals array. It's the same thing where we're going through, looping through these elements, and each time we're concatenating it on, followed by a return or a new line. If it's /r, it's short for return. /n, \n is new line, and so we say the totals are new line. And then the total string, which is the 4 elements, each time followed by a return or by a new line. So there's a new line at the end, and then we display out this. So there's actually 2 new lines, because there's going to be one new line here, which is after the last element, and then we tack on another new line here. So that's why there's 2 in a row. And then we display out this word sum, and then this value, which we computed before. And then the average, which we computed before. All right, so here's how we create a rectangular array. You remember we used this in the last 128 for I think the friends assignment, and the first friends assignment. Remember you entered in some people's names, and we just had a single dimension array called names, And then I had you change it to a two-dimensional array where it stored the first name and the last name. So whether it was single dimension or two-dimensional, row count was the same because that's the number of friends you have. And this column count is going to be the number of columns. And in that assignment, you recall, it was just a two-column array. First column had the first name, and the second column had the last name. Of course, this column count can be, arbitrarily large, just like the row count can be arbitrarily large. And the way you declare a two-dimensional array is you put a little comma inside there, inside the double braces, the square braces. And so here's an example of you're declaring an integer array, a two-dimensional integer array called numbers, and it's a 3x2 array. It's got 3 rows and 2 columns. Syntax for referring to an element in a rectangular array is just what we remember. Got a row index and a column index. So a 4x4 array would look like the index values. So the first number is the row. So this is row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3. And this is column. The first column is column 0, column 1, column 2, and column 3. So here we're assigning values to the code that assigns values to the numbers array. And so we are assigning it 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so we're assigning it. This is 4-dimensional. So let's do 3, 2. So let me erase those lines there. Okay, so really we're talking about for if this 3x2 array here, this thing, it would be 3 rows and 2 columns. So we're just talking about this area right here. 3 rows and 2 columns. And 0, 0 is going to be equal to 1, 1. And 0, 1 here is 2. This is 2. And this is 3. And this is 4. And this is 5. And this is 6. So 2, 1, 6. So here's different ways of this is code that creates the same 3x2 array and assigns the values right in one statement. So this is going to be 0, 0, 0, 1, because this is row 1. This is the first row, which is row 0. This is the second row, which is row 1. This is the third row, which is row 2. And this is 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 0, 2, 1. Here's a string. Here's code that declares a 3x2 array of strings. And so the first row would be some sort of code for the book. And so we have these special codes. Maybe they're product codes or something. They're not ISBNs. They look different than ISBNs. But so we're saying we've got this array. It's got 3 books in it, and the first column, or the first element of each row, is this product code, and the second element of each row is the title of the book. So this is the book that we're using right now. And if we were using, if this were a Java course, we might be using this book. And if this were, let's see, I guess we don't use this in any class anymore. I used to teach a course, ITS147, which we don't have anymore, which is ASP.NET. It's ASP.NET. It's a little different than what we're doing because the applications are designed to run in a web browser. So it's a way to do internet stuff. Anyway, so this is the third row of this string array named products, and this is the first element of that row, and this is the second element of that row. So that's one way of creating this string array, this two-dimensional string array. Here's another way of creating this two-dimensional string array where this type is implied by the elements. These elements are strings, and we're saying it's a new two-dimensional array named products, and this is here we're initializing it. You notice that there's double braces here. Double braces. And this syntax for using the GetLength method, and it's a method, not a property, because it takes a parameter, takes an argument, and this gives you the length of the rows. This gives you the length of the columns. So you use the GetLength method to get the number of rows or the number of columns in a rectangular array. To get the number of rows, you specify 0 for the dimension index of the argument. And to get the number of columns, you specify 1 for this dimension index argument. Dimension index. That's dimension index. Here's code that will display that numbers array, and you notice it's a nested for loop. It's a nested for loop. Got a for loop on the outside. You got a for loop on the inside. The inside loops through the columns, so we're looping through the number of columns. That's the 1 here, is specifying columns. And you know, if you wanted to, you could create constants. You know, create a constant called rows, and rows is equal to 0. And we could have columns, declare a constant called columns equal to 1. And that way inside here you could put get the length of the rows and get the length of the columns if you wanted to. Anyway, so this thing on the outside it's looping through rows, but on the inside it's looping through columns. So for the first row, for the 0th row, it's gonna append using this, you know, concatenation. It's gonna append the first column and the second column. Append it, and then we're going to put another. And there's no new line. But then after we're done with the first column, we throw in the new line, and so there's going to be a new line after each row. This loops through the columns. This loops through the rows, and so that's why we end up with this. So these are the first column, the second column, and the third column. And these numbers, of course, were initialized back here, right here, or here. And here we've done the same thing for the products array. We're looping through, first we're doing 0, 0, and then we're doing 0, 1. So this is 0, 0, this is 0, 1, this is 1, 0, this is 1, 1, this is 2, 0, this is 2, 1. Product strings, and then there's this new line. So we also have jagged arrays. Jagged arrays are a little different. So we have this is more like arrays of arrays. So we have this outside array, the rows, and then each one of these row arrays is an array. Okay, so we have like an array of an array, and so this is a numbers array, and we're saying it's got 3 rows, and so we've declared this array, this array of rows, 3 of them, and then here we are declaring each of these. Okay, so so we're saying that, so let's just say we're declaring, let's say first we're declaring like a singly dimensioned array of these arrays, and this is the first row, this is the second row, and the third row. And the first row is going to be an array that's got 3 columns. The second one is going to be an array that's got 4 columns, or 4 elements really. And this third row, the third array element is going to be an array with just 2 columns. So you can see why it's jagged. Is there a picture? Yeah, here's a picture. Okay, so you know, to refer to it, you do this, and there's a lot of and so here we're assigning values. So you know, it's not a square bracket integer comma integer end square bracket. It's not that. It's square bracket integer end square bracket begin square bracket integer end square bracket. And so this assigns 1, 2, 3. If this is the first row, it's kind of an odd way. And these are columns, so it's actually row. Anyway, the first row, which is an array, has 3 elements, and we're assigning it 1, 2, and 3. And the second row, the second row is also an array that's got 4 elements, and the third row is actually an array. It's got 2 elements. And so if we assign these values like this, it's actually easier to look at this way of declaring the array. This is the first row, this is the second row, and this is the third row, and this is a jagged array. And the first row is an integer array that's got 3 elements. The second row is an integer array that's got 4 elements. The third row is an integer array that's got 2 elements. And so here's how we assign them. It's the same as doing this. It'll be interesting that I don't recall going. I don't really recall this chapter, but you know, there aren't a lot of times where you use these jagged arrays. I don't recall ever using jagged arrays in any code I've written, but you know, they're still useful. So here's an example of jagged arrays. It's a string of creates a jagged array of strings. And so we've got 3 rows, And the first row has got some movies. The first row's got 3 movies, and you know, this could be something like the first row are the movies that you know, were made at the Warner Brothers, you know, movie company, and the second array was made by some other movie company or something, or maybe years or genre or something, and you know, and so on. So so this first array has got this. Okay, this whole thing is an array. The first row has got 3 elements in its subarray, if you want to call it that. The second row has got 4. It's another array of. It's got 4 elements in it, and then the third row it's got another array. It's got only 2 elements in it. And again, this is another way to create this jagged array of strings, where the type is not declared out here, but it's implied by the assignment of the values. And so here, this is how we can do that. We just have a generic var there. In a lot of programming languages, you use the word var to declare a variable. JavaScript, you do. And then, so we're declaring this array here, and it's an array of arrays. It's an array. It's not an array of strings. It's not an array of integers. It's an array of arrays. Okay, and it's an array of arrays, and the arrays, the arrays elements, the elements that are arrays, are actually arrays of strings. So, you see that? So here's something that would display the numbers array, the jagged array of numbers, of digits, of integers, the jagged array of integers, not numbers. So first we declare this string, which is going to collect it all and display out right here. And so here we loop through the rows, and inside each row we loop through each little mini array or subarray, you want to call it that. And so we use GetLength to refer to the length, the number of rows. We use that method. And then inside each one of these arrays, each one of these numbers arrays is a singly dimensioned array. You see, this is a single dimension array. This is a single dimension array of 3 elements, of 4 elements, of 2 elements. And so these are arrays, got 3 of them here. And we package these 3 arrays up into a bigger array, which is this first thing here, called titles. And so it makes sense that when we're looking at the outside, it looks like a 2-dimensional array. It's actually a jagged array, but it looks like a 2-dimensional array. So if we want to refer to the number of rows, we use this method, this getLength method, just like we use the getLength method out here for the rows. But for the columns, instead of using the getLength, 1 method, it's not really not really columns anymore, because the columns vary. The number, so it's not really columns. It's actually an array of arrays. It's actually an array of singly dimensioned arrays, and so that it makes sense that we would use the length property, because really it's just a singly dimensioned array there. And so so for each row, we loop through the elements of that singly dimensioned array, and for row 0 we get 1, 2, and 3. For row 1 we get 4, 5, 6, and 7. So for row 0 this is 3. For row 0 this is 3. For for the second row, or for row number 1, for the second row, this length is 4 elements. And for the third row, which is row number 2, the length is 2. That's why we have 2 here. And here we do the same thing for the strings, the titles of these movies. And in this case, we are putting a vertical bar in between instead of a space. Here we're putting a space in between, which is why there's a space there. Here we're using a vertical bar to distinguish, because movies can have spaces in them. So that's why we see vertical bars here. And there's always going to be a vertical bar after the title, or after the element. This is after the title. Yes. Yes, after the title. So that's why there's a vertical bar here, a vertical bar here, and a vertical bar here. There's not one here, because we don't put one in the beginning. And this does the new line. So here's some properties and some methods, common properties and methods of the array class. Length gets the number of elements of all the dimensions of the array. So length, I guess, could be used to determine, in a 2-dimensional array, it'll does number of rows times number of columns, and that's what length is. For a jagged array, we can get back out the number, the size of the individual arrays that way. Or this gets the index of the last element, the index of the last element of a specified dimension of an array. And we can copy an array to another array. So if we have to you know, if we're going along, we decide, you know, we wrote some code and we're going along, and we end up, it turns out we for some reason we didn't declare our array big enough, which can happen depending on what your program is doing, depending on the application. It's possible, you know, you may not want to, you know, you may be in a tight memory, an application where the data sets can vary tremendously, and you declare an array and you decide you didn't declare enough space, so you declare another one, and you got to copy. You got to copy from one array to another. There's a nice copy method here, and these are common methods where in the old days we had to write these ourselves. And I'll probably, maybe I'll have you write a BinarySearch array, BinarySearch method. Of course, it's got to be sorted first. For BinarySearch to work, it's got to be sorted. And thank goodness there's a sort method where you can sort the array first, and then after it's sorted, then BinarySearch works. If the array is not sorted, you have to do a linear search. One of the things that's nice about these sort methods is that the runtime machine is smart enough to know what sort algorithm to use. There are like 6 basic sort algorithms depending on the nature of your data. If your data is sparse, you know, if the array is, well, depending on the nature of the data, and how there are different sort algorithms work better than others depending on the data. All right. code that uses the GetLength and the GetUpperBounds. So let's say we have an array of numbers here. It looks like this. It's four-dimensional. It's got 4 rows, 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so if we're looking for the length of rows, it's going to be this. So it's 4. And the upper bound, it's the index. The upper bound is the index. So index 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. So here is a method. And this is how we use a sort method. Okay, so we learned about the sort. We learned that there's a sort method. We got to so this is how we use it. It's a method, standalone method, doesn't return anything. But this is an in-out. So it's a reference. This is a reference parameter. And whenever you're passing an array to a method, it's always by reference. So you only need to do this. So outside here we declare this array. It's a string array. It's got some last names in it, and then you want to sort it. So we just say array static class array dot sort method, and we just pass it the name of the array, and this sort method can access the actual array elements themselves, and it can modify them. So it's a reference variable. So it reads the last names, grabs them out, sorts them, and puts them back in order, in alphabetical order, in ascending order. So Bohm, Taylor, and Murock are not in alphabetical order. It should be Bohm, Murock, and Taylor. And so this here, displays or creates a string that's got them in order because it was just sorted, and then this displays it out. So that's why it looks like this. So when this is declared, this is array element 0, array element 1, array element 2, and then it's sorted right here. And after it's sorted, then this is array element 0 still, and this is array element 2, and this is array element 1. So, array element 0, 1, and 2. And this is binary search. So, they have to be sorted to begin with, or you use a sort array. And here they have to be sorted to begin with, so they're sorted already here. And this returns. It returns an element. We have this. We're doing a binary search on employees. That's this. And we're looking for this guy named Finkel P. And so it's going to be this is index number 1. It's got the second element, index number 1. So this thing is going to return a 1. So index is equal to 1 because it's the 1th element of the array. And and so what we see here is simply this has returned, so this is a value 1, yeah? So now here we want to set sales amount equal to sales amounts index 1, because this is 1, this is the same as this here. So what's sales amount index 1? Well, it's 0, 1, it's this one. So that's why it's that amount there. And here's code that creates a reference to another array. So we have this array called inches, and it's a double array, and there's 3 elements, and it's going to be, the element values are 1, 2, and 3. So the 0th element is 1. The first element, or the 1th element, or the second element is 1, and these are indexes. And then we're declaring a second array called inches, and we're setting that value equal to we're setting inches 2 equal to inches 1. So now the inches 2 array is equal to the inches 1 array, and now we're setting inches 2, which is this one, equal to 4. And this is a reference, so it actually changes it back in this one also. Is that right? I think that's right. So this just sets a reference. So after you execute this, that means that inches 2 is the same as inches 1. It's the same array. So if you mess with inches 2, you're also messing with inches 1. And here we're going to set it to a different array. That's different from copying. Okay, so this is not copying. This is how you copy. Use this array. We use the copy, and so we're copying this array into this array. It's a separate array, and this is the number of elements to copy. So here we're declaring an array called inches. It's a double array, and these are the values. And then we declare another array. We're declaring another array. It's a new array called double, and so this copies inches into centimeters, the length, which is 3, and then this thing actually goes through and changes the centimeters to, it converts inches to centimeters. So these are new array values. And this is another use of the copy, where we're specifying indexes here. So they don't necessarily have to be like 1-to-1. All right, so we're getting into returning code for a method that returns an array. It's slide 35. We're like halfway through. Yeah, we're exactly halfway through. So why don't I leave it here, and next time I'll finish up this set of slides, and I'll give you an assignment also. All right, how do I get out of here? Escape. So I will see you next time. Any questions? All right, thanks for watching.